this is the biggest offseason in Bengals history, only because Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, you've never had two talents like that at the quarterback and wide receiver position. What are some things that you guys want to see the Bengals do this offseason that you think can help get this ship corrected so where we could be talking about the Bengals in January about their next upcoming their upcoming playoff game versus sitting at home or hiring a new coach? Evan, let's start with you.
I think you got to prioritize athletes. I think you got to get faster. I think you got to get younger, more athletic. And I think you're probably going to need to reevaluate these draft picks because there's been too many of the Zach Carters being played out of position. There's too many of the Tyler Shelvins being drafted early. There's too many of the Jackson Carmans and Drew Samples, and we think we know better. It's not always as simple as the good players in college are good in the NFL, but if they are high-end athletes, they were productive in college, and they show you the skills that they need to be successful at their position, whether that's, a defensive lineman having a decent set of pass rush moves already that they can rely on, or just having a counter. You'd be amazed at how many guys don't have counters off of their primary moves that they like to use because they don't often get challenged that way. Wide receivers, route depth, setting up the route. Not just do you run the route, but do you use head fakes? Do you use different ways to open your body and play with the leverage? Do you attack the blind spot of the corner well when they shift their leverage and try and get them off balance in that sense? You're looking for all these skills because wide receivers getting open, separation. Lad McConkey, yeah, he wasn't out there blowing anybody away, but goddamn, he was just a constant good receiver in college who tested like a good athlete and then continued to separate well when he got to the NFL. There's things that you can look at. And Marvin Lewis did used to say that if you're going to stick around in the NFL, you have to be able to do one thing really well, at least. And I think they can kind of get back to that of saying, hey, let's go ahead and look at these big program guys. Let's, get these, interesting athletes. And maybe they're not the most darling, maybe they're not the highest upside, but we do feel really confident that they can be a solid player who can contribute for a team that's looking to rely on them in the playoffs down the stretch in the season.
Yeah, I think for me, it's always going to come back to the draft for me. You have to get more out of your draft picks in the short term and in the long term. You have to be able to know that we're going to draft a 6th-round whatever, and we know worst case scenario he can come in and do this for us next Sunday.
Right.
That's the point of it. Yes, there's going to be times where you have more of your pure developmental picks, but even then, you would still like to have something that they can contribute on game days. And if there's not a clear path to that, let's maybe it's go a different direction. But right now, with the money the Bengals are throwing to Joe Burrow, they're going to throw to Jamar Chase. Hopefully, they're going to throw to Tee Higgins, Trey Hendrickson, all these guys. Being able to draft is going to be forever and always will be the cheapest way to add talent to your team. And if you continue to not do that well, now you're not going to have talent. You're not going to have affordable talent. So then you have to go pay more expensive talent or pay worse players more money than your rookies would do. At the end of the day, man, drafting is always going to solve your problems. If you need depth, how about we draft some high floor guys? If you need upside, let's go draft some athletes with crazy production numbers. Like there's more clear paths to drafting, successfully than the Bengals have in the last few years. Yet this year's draft is looking pretty solid so far, but we kind of seen them take an athletic offensive lineman with very limited tape. Same thing with Chris Jenkins. Chris Jenkins had some good numbers, but he tested pretty well. He's done a lot of things well. McKinley Jackson performed pretty terribly at Texas A&M, but he tested well. He has the traits. He they bet on the traits of McKinley Jackson to do things. And that's just even Cedric Johnson, man. Cedric Johnson, athlete. When he's getting the game, he's making hustle plays. He's flying around the edge. He might not be doing things the most technically sound, but he's getting to the quarterback, and that's what his job is. You have to just continue to draft better because, again, there's no better way to add cheap, affordable talent to your team than through the draft.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think that it really comes down to two ways. You have to approach this free agency and this offseason with urgency. And I think it's as simple as that. There needs to be turmoil and there needs to be change in this roster. And obviously, they're going to hire a new DC. They're going to hire a new O-line coach. But I just need to see some urgency. Not saying that, the way that they've gone about it was terrible, but it just hasn't worked out. And I'm talking free agency. You guys cannot be afraid to release guys that are no longer being serious, productive players on your team, whether that be a Sam Hubbard, whether that be, hey, a guy like, BJ Hill, that's a serious conversation. Are you going to bring him back? You cannot be afraid to, go about it in free agency saying, hey, we are going to have a complete shift on the defense side of the ball. Because to be honest, the offense, we can all look at it and say, hey, interior offensive line is a major need. Besides that, draft some depth at wide receiver late, round 2 or day 2, day 3. But tight end position, I think is pretty simple. I like Tanner McLaughlin. You got Drew Sample still in there. Re-sign Mike Gesicki. But besides that, I think I want to see the defense side of the ball be a priority and just have a massive change of philosophy when it comes to defense. So that's what I'm looking for. This year's draft class, to be honest with you, it is very rare that you get a draft class year 1 that just comes out and dominates. So whoever they draft in this year's class, I'm not even going to be worried about, hey, are they going to be a key contributor on my Super Bowl team right now? I'm looking at next year. I'm looking at 3 years down the road, because when you look at teams like the Detroit Lions, teams like the Kansas City Chiefs, the teams that are, at the top of the NFL, teams like the Philadelphia Eagles, they just draft talent. And at the end of the day, you have to hit on your draft picks, or else you're going to see the issues that the Bengals are having. They're not having issues, obviously, from this past year's draft class, but it's, hey, 2 years ago. That's what's not showing up now. So just some urgency when it comes to the defense side of the ball with letting go of some of your old players. And it really comes down to also, I hope that they're aggressive in the draft. So